All right, Ziyanda Ngcobo is our reporter who was at that briefing earlier today. Ziyanda, a number of complaints against the president. What exactly has he been cleared of?
As you would have just heard, then Clement, Advocate Kholeka Gcaleka, clearing him of the issue of whether or not he declared his interest. And within that scope, you would need to have a discussion around, and she outlined the difference between paid work, which would mean the president was active in the day-to-day operations at the Phala Phala farm, versus financial interests, which you'll know President Ramaphosa is a director at Ngcobo Holdings, which is the holding company which includes then his Phala Phala farm, saying that he did not, or that the law firstly permits having financial interests, but he also declared his financial interests. The other issue was whether or not the president placed himself in a position of a conflict of interest where his private interest would interrupt his ability and constitutional duties as a president. He was cleared of that. The acting public protector finding that in essence the president is not really dealing. Yes, he does get involved insofar as giving consultation to his team at Phala Phala, but there was no evidence to back up that issue of whether or not there was a conflict of interest. And also the conflicts of interest emanating, of course, from the fact that, now linked to the other allegation of abuse of power, whether or not it was correct for the president to actually go to his head of security, Major General Wally Rhoda, instead of reporting it like you and I would at the police station. Gcaleka upholding that the president was correct and that there's no proof that the president instructed Rhoda to act in the manner that he subsequently did by having that alleged clandestine operation where he's alleged to have kidnapped the suspects, tortured them, and then bribed them into silence. So really saying that there's no evidence of that. So now on that issue of the conduct of Wally Rhoda, she's basically said that there is a case that he possibly has to answer for, but that would be beyond her scope. So she's referred him, to the SAPS that would fall under Gcaleka, and that's what the report has been sent to him, to deal with his misconduct for going beyond what was needed of him, because his role is not to have investigated the matter, but merely was to have passed on the information.
Yeah, speaking of the head of the president's security, here's what the acting public protector had to say about his role in this scandal.
The Minister of the South African Police Service must take note of the findings of maladministration and improper conduct against the SAPS, as highlighted in this report, in connection with the allegation that the members of the SAPS attached to the PPS acted improperly by investigating the crime of housebreaking with the intent to steal and theft, which took place on or about the 9th of February 2020 at Phala Phala Farm, in line with the authority vested on the Minister of Police in terms of Section 206 of the Constitution. The National Commissioner of SAPS must, within 60 calendar days from the date of receipt of this report, ensure that appropriate action is initiated against General Rhoda and Sergeant Rukoto for contraventions of the SAPS prescripts as highlighted in this report, in line with the provisions of Section 40 of the SAPS Act and Regulation 6 of the SAPS Discipline Regulations 2016.
Ziyanda, so that is one person who works closely with the president. Another person of interest in Ngcobo, who used to be the political advisor to President Cyril Ramaphosa, he made that trip to Namibia. Yes. What has the acting public protector found about that trip, and what's transpired in Namibia regarding this matter?
Many questions coming from journalists, including myself, regarding that trip. So in her findings, the acting public protector says there's no nexus between the trip that Ngcobo undertook with Major General Wally Rhoda and was approved by the then National Commissioner Khetla Sithole. By the way, Ngcobo is not in the employ of the SAPS, and she's conceded that. But they are saying that, and according to the record that they got from Khetla Sithole, that trip was undertaken to discuss an African matter of a national security, an African security matter, actually is what I have here in my notes. And so we asked, one, he's a political advisor, but two, the sequence of events acting public protector. For you to say that there's no nexus between that trip and the investigations into Phala Phala that Wally Roda was seemingly unlawfully conducting, how can you say that when you look at the sequence of events? The theft happens on the 9th of February 2020. One of the suspects, I think, was arrested around the 13th of June. And then around the 25th and 26th of June, this trip was approved. It was around June 2020 where they undertook this trip. How can you say then there's no nexus? Can you say then that it's just a coincidence? And she said there's absolutely no evidence to prove that that trip to Namibia was also over and above the African security matter to deal with Phala Phala. And then another question came to say, okay, but then did you engage with the Namibian authorities perhaps?
I was about to ask.
The inspector, the IG there, the Inspector General there, or her counterpart there, and she said, well, look, this is now, it's beyond her scope because the police, mind you, and she's right, the police are still investigating this matter. So she is mainly looking in terms of EMEA, which is the Executive Members Act and the Executive Ethics Code. So insofar as asking about that, that's no longer within her scope. Then there was also a question that I posed then, okay, but maybe the bank accounts, because how do we know what the nature of this trip was? And then she said, of course, they've learned lessons from the now dubbed CR17, court case, that venturing into the bank accounts, personal bank accounts of individuals is one, dangerous, but two, the scope and the nature of the complaints did not make any reference to the financial interests of the likes of Gcaleka, but certainly I can anticipate. In fact, I've just seen a statement from the EFF rejecting, the outcomes of this report. So we can anticipate that over the days to come, there's going to be lots to be said around this matter, Clement.
Yeah, the DA also earlier releasing a statement and rejecting this report. Now you say the EFF, the UDM, we spoke to them earlier. Bantu Holomisa says we do not recognize this. Ziyanda, Ngcobo, thank you for analyzing that report and summarizing it for us.